Thanks for your support as a channel member, Justin Inakaitis. I've gone back in time to a period before hybrid engines in Formula One to relive the 2013 F1 season thanks to a modded database. It's been created by Kevin Tadado 10, who's made it available on overtake.gg. I'll leave a link to it in the description. It's really easy to install and free to download, but it's only available to PC users. I think you'll agree, it looks fantastic. It's even got faces for the whole grid. There are some big names on this grid as well. 2009 World Champion Jenson Button is here, as is 2016 winner Nico Rosberg. What? Even Kimi Raikkonen is with us too. And yes, that's the original Crashmeister, Pastor Maldonado. He's at Williams alongside Valtteri Bottas. And of course we also have the late Jules Bianchi, who's on the grid at Marussia. Can you believe it's nearly a decade since he passed away? What a lost talent he was. The F1 Manager 24 game doesn't have all the races from the 2013 season, so we're going to be a bit creative with the calendar. Australia opens the season with Mexico taking the place of Malaysia on the basis that both countries start with the same letter. There were plans for a race on the streets of New Jersey in 2013, although they did fall through. We're putting Las Vegas in the calendar after Canada to acknowledge that and replace the Korean Grand Prix. Austria replaces the German Grand Prix, which was actually held at the Nürburgring in 2013, and Baku is our substitute for India, completing our adjusted schedule. There are several teams I could choose to use in this save. Lotus would be fun, and I considered Marussia, but their car is woeful, so I've settled on Mercedes. This was before Nico and Lewis wanted to run each other off the road at every opportunity. The 2013 car was fast, taking multiple pole positions in the early races, but it chewed through its tyres like they were going out of fashion in the races. That's why this car is rated 17th for tyre preservation in the database. Overall though, the car should be decent, and with some development perhaps we can beat Red Bull. How do you think we'll get on? Predict the champion now in the comments. Off to Australia we went, and it was a Red Bull front row lockout for the opening round with Mark Webber on pole in front of his home crowd. But Sebastian Vettel got past early on and ran off to win the race. Hamilton and Rosberg battled the Ferraris of Alonso and Massa on the final lap, with Rosberg clinching 5th as Alonso ran out of fuel just after the line. I've never seen an AI car do that, normally it's me. Raikkonen split the Red Bulls as Romain Grosjean scooped 4th for Lotus. What was painfully obvious in this race was the Mercedes tyre wear is atrocious. Jenson Button and Sergio Perez took the final 2 points positions for McLaren. We went to Mexico for round 2, and Lewis had got his Mercedes on the front row alongside Vettel. And we did manage to find a way into the lead on lap 5 at turn 1, but an undercut from the German meant he was out of our reach after the first pit stops. Sergio Perez had a spin at turn 1, bringing groans from the home support, and we collected 5th and 6th after passing Grosjean in the closing laps as Vettel went back to back to kick off the season. Fernando Alonso got his first podium of the year in 2nd as Raikkonen made the top 3 once again. Nico Hülkenberg scored a point for Sauber, yes, the same team he's driving for in 2025, and 2 wins for Vettel mean he has a 17-point lead after 2 races. Raikkonen is 2nd, and Rosberg has outscored Hamilton so far. Red Bull are comfortable in the constructors, while Ferrari and Mercedes are level on points. We had our first upgrades ready for round 3 in China, bringing new front and rear wings to the party. Our tyre preservation still isn't great, but it's definitely better. Alonso got the Ferrari onto pole position in Shanghai, but it was Rosberg who mugged his fellow German Vettel for 2nd at turn 1, and by the end of the lap he was leading, pulling this audacious move on Alonso. Hamilton was looking good on his strategy, but he spun exiting the pit lane. An early undercut got Vettel into the lead, but Rosberg managed to catch him up and take the lead back on lap 27. Vettel boxed on lap 34 and Rosberg on lap 36. A clean stop and the German was on his way, but he returned to the track 7 seconds behind Vettel. He closed down the gap, sweeping into the lead at turn 1. With fresher tyres, it was enough to get the job done and prove that our upgrades are working. Hamilton brought home P5, which could have been a podium but for his pit exit mishap. Button scored a neat 8th place for McLaren as the Woking team scored with both cars. Vettel still leads the championship, but Rosberg is now his closest challenger. Alonso was again on pole for Bahrain as we went for the goated one-stop strategy with low fuel. Rosberg started on the softs while Hamilton was on the mediums. However, our strategy didn't work as planned because Vettel won again. Rosberg only just held off Raikkonen for 3rd as Hamilton came home 5th. Vettel's 3rd win of the year means he holds a 33-point lead after 4 races. Rosberg, Raikkonen and Alonso are covered by just 3 points, and Hamilton has yet to hit its stride with Mercedes. Red Bull are 40 points ahead of us in the Constructors. We had more upgrades ahead of the Spanish Grand Prix, which Alonso took a third straight pole position for. By lap 5, we'd got our drivers to the front and they began to battle, a sign of things to come in the future perhaps. However, it was Vettel and Red Bull who came through to win, although only by 4 seconds. The championship leader extended his lead further with this 4th win of the year. Rosberg was 2nd and Hamilton took his first Mercedes podium in 3rd. Pole sitter Alonso had fallen to 6th. In Monaco, we locked out the front row as Lewis got his first pole position for the team. The lights went out and Hamilton held the lead from his teammate. We ran a 2-stop strategy, which meant Lewis had to hunt down Vettel, who was on hard tyres. The British driver passed the Red Bull with 15 laps remaining, but the race was red flagged with a few laps to go as Webber blocked the track. Hamilton held off his teammate at the restart though and secured the win by 2 seconds, Rosberg sealing the 1-2 finish. Alonso snatched 3rd from Vettel. Both team and driver celebrated wildly, with Monaco wins meaning just that little bit more. Lewis's win saw him rise to 5th in the championship as Vettel continued to hold a healthy 34-point lead over Nico. 6 races in and we've managed to make our car a match for the championship leading Red Bulls. Canada is up next and we look super strong on paper. We proved our strength in qualifying by securing another front row lockout with Lewis on pole again. Alonso got between us at turn 1 as the lead trio pulled away from the chasing pack in the early laps. Hamilton stopped later than his rivals. Would he retain the lead after his stop though? Not quite. He slotted in between Nico and Fernando. As our drivers contested the lead, it became clear that we were on a 2-stop strategy while Raikkonen and Vettel were on a 1-stopper. Alonso made his final stop first but failed to undercut Nico. Maybe Lewis could hold the lead from his stop then. Yes! He was comfortably ahead as he exited the pit lane, and he was on the soft tyres. The 2-stopping trio closed in on the 1-stoppers and the 5 of them were completely together with 12 laps remaining. Hamilton muscled his way past Alonso, then found a way past Vettel and quickly disposed of Raikkonen. This was all achieved in the space of 1 lap. Rosberg found his way into 2nd and we brought home another 1-2 finish. Consecutive wins for Lewis brought him to 3rd in the championship, 41 points behind Vettel, after the German could only finish 5th. And the 1-2 gave Mercedes the Constructors' Championship lead as well. Further upgrades arrived for Las Vegas in the form of a new chassis, underfloor and both front and rear wings. It means our car is now ridiculously fast. But we were still somehow beaten to pole in Vegas by Alonso, with Hamilton joining him on the front row. Rosberg should have started 3rd, but the game glitched and put him, Massa and Verne in the pit lane. I have no idea why. Button managed to take an early lead for McLaren, although he did have Lewis on his tail. We got Lewis into a comfortable lead by stopping a couple of laps before our rivals, and with clean air, Lewis went on to build a 7-second advantage. However, this late crash for Daniel Ricciardo brought out a VSC, and Button, who was 1-stopping, was now right on Lewis's gearbox. We weren't able to escape the McLaren when the green flags came back out, as Button streaked back into the lead. Despite the 2009 World Champion having DRS on the final lap though, Lewis held off his former teammate to clinch the victory. Rosberg put in a superb drive to rise to 4th, while Vettel picked up 3rd place. A 3rd win in succession for Lewis means he's now 2 points behind Nico and 31 behind Vettel. Next up was Silverstone, the home race for many people within the team, with our Brackley and Brixworth bases just minutes down the road. Nico beat Lewis to pole at his home track with Vettel just behind in 3rd. Rosberg held the lead as the lights went out and the championship leader was in hot pursuit. Red Bull ran an aggressive strategy, pitting Vettel before we stopped our drivers, meaning we had to chase the German down in the final stint. Lewis rose to the challenge, setting a string of fastest laps to close in on the Red Bull. They went side by side into Cox Corner on lap 42, but thankfully this time everyone made it through safely. Hamilton then swept by at Stowe Corner thanks to DRS, and Rosberg soon followed him by as well. It came down to a final lap showdown between the two Mercedes. Rosberg grabbed the advantage at Brooklands with DRS. Lewis fought back, but he was unable to pass at Stowe Corner, meaning Rosberg denied him a home win. The championship closed up a little bit further as a result, with Vettel in P3. It was another all-silver front row in Austria, Hamilton on the pole this time. We held our position at lights out and Lewis and Nico immediately locked horns as they gapped Vettel and Alonso. However, as our soft tyres faded, Vettel closed in on his mediums. The Red Bull made its one and only stop on lap 32. We stopped Lewis on lap 47 and Nico on lap 48 and found ourselves 8 seconds off the leader. But 10 laps later we were right on Vettel's tail. Nico wasted very little time sending it at turn 1 and taking the lead, Lewis only following through once Nico had broken DRS. And Lewis wasn't able to close the 2-second gap that had emerged to Rosberg, meaning the German took another win. Vettel joined us on the podium once more, but his championship lead was now down to 9. Before we crack on with the rest of this season, come and join the growing AHGP Discord community. We share our crazy F1 manager saves as well as chatting about F1, football and other motorsport series. There's a link in the description for you which will take you right to the heart of the action. Okay, back to Brosades in 2013. Nico had a great chance to take the championship lead in Hungary after qualifying on pole, with Vettel only 6th, and those chances were improved by the championship leader making this early error. We dominated the race and we witnessed a race-long battle between our drivers. As Lewis exited the pit lane for the final time, he was side by side with Nico. Thankfully, we avoided disaster and Hamilton edged into the lead. The pair continued to exchange first place and it was Lewis who made the decisive move at the start of the final lap, going on to clinch his 4th win of the year. We destroyed the opposition, winning by over 20 seconds. Vettel recovered to 4th, which meant he did retain the championship lead, but Nico's now just 3 points behind. Lewis's win brings him to within 12 of the Red Bull man. Alonso and Raikkonen are split by a point in their tussle over 4th. And Red Bull's early season dominance has evaporated and been replaced by Mercedes' dominance a year early. We're now almost 100 points ahead in the constructors. We had another front row lockout in Spa, but it was a 5-way fight for the win as Lotus had front running pace. An early stop for Nico kept him in the fight, but a slow stop for Lewis saw him lose ground. This Grosjean lockup while the Frenchman was leading saw him fall out of contention. Then this collision between the Saubers brought out a late safety car. I chose to box Lewis and Nico for fresh, soft rubber. Both Lotuses and Vettel stayed out. We had 4 laps to go when the safety car ended. Could we overhaul our rivals? Nico took the bull by the horns, passing Kimi and Seb on the same lap. He fended off the German to win the race, while Lewis passed Vettel on the final lap for 2nd. Rosberg's win gave him the championship lead and moved him further clear of Hamilton. It was our toughest race for a while. Pitting under the safety car was key though. Daniel Ricciardo picked up 2 points for Toro Rosso in a rare point score for the lower teams. The next race in Monza was pretty chaotic. An early safety car saw everyone else box while we stayed on track, but a second one midway through the race bailed us out. Hamilton eventually found his way into the lead before a third safety car in the closing stages. I decided to box both drivers for softs once again. As we restarted, Hülkenberg and Sutil were in the podium places. Rosberg quickly found his way past them, but Lewis held his advantage to the flag. Vettel pinched 3rd from Button on the final lap to keep him in the title fight. Paul di Resta finished 6th for Force India, while Hülkenberg ended up 8th ahead of Ricciardo and Bottas. Hamilton's win moved him a point ahead of Vettel and 9 behind Rosberg. We brought our final upgrades for the season to the car ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix, fitting new side pods and suspension. Hopefully this will be enough to ensure one of our drivers is crowned champion. We've already run away with the Constructors' Championship. Lewis put it on pole under the lights and Alonso tried his best to snatch the lead at turn 1. The Spaniard did get ahead though, sweeping around the outside of turn 5. The pair shared the lead until lap 18 when a virtual safety car was called. It was a lap before our drivers were due to pit, so I called them in as the others stayed out. And this stop proved critical, as Alonso stopped 4 laps after us and was over 10 seconds behind Lewis when he rejoined, meaning Nico was now a net 2nd. And by the time Lewis left his 2nd stop on lap 45, he was 2 seconds clear of the fighting Rosberg and Raikkonen. Rosberg was able to shake off the 2007 champion's attention to secure 2nd and hang on to the championship lead. Vettel could have finished on the podium, but he lost out to Alonso in the closing laps. Thanks to that win, Lewis and Nico are split by just 2 points with 5 races to go. Vettel is still in the hunt, but he hasn't won since Spain, 9 races ago. We had the chance to seal Mercedes' first Constructors' title in Suzuka, and we did it in style with a 1-2 finish as Lewis won to take the championship lead for the first time this season. Rosberg did have pole, but Lewis nailed this overtake on the final lap to grab the win. The team celebrated in the garage as world champions for the first time since 2009, when the team was known as Brawn. It was a quiet race, but Paul di Resta did score points for the third race in a row for Force India. Lewis now has a 5-point advantage on Nico thanks to his 7th victory of the year. That's also 10 wins in a row for Mercedes. The dominance is real right now. However, our winning run came to an end in Baku as Alonso took victory from pole for Ferrari. Rosberg started and finished second, but Lewis hung on to the championship lead as he rescued third. He made this pass on Vettel as we switched him to a 2-stop race, having been as low as 6th at one point. The Red Bull would end up 7th thanks to a mechanical issue, leaving his title hopes hanging by a thread. We pulled off our best win of the season in Abu Dhabi. Starting 2nd and 5th with Lewis on the front row, we managed to bag an unlikely 1-2. Nico was down in P8 after losing places at the start when a mid-race safety car brought everyone back together. Lewis was dealt a difficult hand, needing to take the soft tyres much further than was ideal. Nico had mediums available, which was slightly better, but not easy. I kept Lewis with the leaders through clever management of the tyres and ensuring we got DRS to keep up. As others faded on their tyres, Nico came through and actually took the lead with a lap remaining. But Lewis snatched it back on the final lap to score a truly satisfying win. I play on hard race difficulty. This victory genuinely had me punching the air. It meant that Lewis had a 9-point lead with 2 rounds to go. Anything could happen. Nothing was done yet. Hamilton could become a 2-time world champion in this universe if he outscored Nico by 16 points in Texas. With no fastest lap bonus point on offer, that's P2 with Nico not scoring, or a win and Nico is 6th or lower. And things looked good for Lewis after qualifying because he was on the front row while Nico was 7th. By the time a safety car was called on lap 6, Nico however was up to 2nd behind Lewis, who had passed Alonso for the lead. But it did throw strategy up in the air. Vettel and Red Bull got a handy undercut on Lewis, who had been leading, meaning we had to hunt down the German driver. But it all changed again when a safety car was called for a second time, as Gutierrez broke down in his Sauber. Lewis was right on the back of Vettel, but he had Nico right behind him too. They both quickly passed the Red Bull, meaning it was yet another late head-to-head between our drivers, and Lewis came out on top to put one hand on the World Championship. He held a 16-point advantage heading into the finale in Brazil, meaning he only needed a 5th place. Raikkonen joined us on the podium, while McLaren had a strong race too. Ricciardo got points, but Alonso had a disaster. The Samba drums were beating as the 5 red lights came on for the final time in 2013. Lewis had delivered a superb lap to take pole, while Nico, needing to finish in the top 2, was 9th. It was a crazy race though, with 2 red flags. The first was caused by home hero Felipe Massa tangling with Sutil's Force India. Then the 2 Williams cars crashed out. It meant strategy was out the window, and eventually it was Mark Webber who came through to win his final ever F1 race. Lewis navigated all of the carnage to finish 4th, crowning him as the new world champion. Rosberg followed him home in 5th, but he'd never looked likely to gain the ground needed to snatch the title away from Lewis. The championship was won by just 18 points in the end, and we really took control after Monaco, with Lewis on the podium for 15 races in a row, from Monaco to his P4 in Sao Paulo. Vettel's strong early start faded as we took the championship by the scruff of the neck. Further down the championship order, Button almost beat Grosjean despite the Lotus being a far superior car. Di Resta scored the bulk of Force India's points, while Ricciardo bagged all of Toro Rosso's before his big move to Red Bull. Massa's struggles at Ferrari meant they were only the 4th best team across the season, while Williams had a miserable campaign, scoring just 2 points. Lewis scored 9 wins across the season against Nico's 4, but the German's consistency across the whole year was what kept him in the fight. Both Mercedes drivers stood on the podium 15 times, and surprisingly Alonso was the qualifying king, scoring 7 pole positions. The Nico versus Lewis head-to-head makes interesting reading. Rosberg was slightly quicker on average race pace, despite winning 5 fewer races, and the pair were equal for pole positions despite a small advantage for Lewis over a single lap. This was a really fun playthrough, and I'd be very much up for doing another one. Let me know which team you'd like to see me use next, or if there's a driver you'd like me to use and change their career story over the course of a few seasons. Let me know in the comments. Having gone back in time today, we're fast forwarding a decade into the future next week as I sim 10 years of F1 Manager. I'm about 8 seasons in at the moment, and it's absolutely wild what's going on. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, leave a like if you enjoyed this, and subscribe for more F1 Manager experiments. You're the best fans. It's bye for now.